Episode number 246 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. My guest today is Dr. Christina Burns. Dr. Burns is the founder of Naturna Institute, Junk Juice, and author. She is a doctor of Eastern medicine and an herbalist with a specialization in women's health and fertility. She began her career at the age of 19 when she began studying nutrition and herbal medicine. Her studies included years spent in China, India, and Nepal, where she learned mindfulness and Eastern medicine from monks in remote areas. Dr. Burns collaborated with physicians in underserved regions and women's hospitals. Over the following 9 years, she achieved degrees in acupuncture, herbal medicine, nutrition, and spiritual coaching. Since returning to North America, she has founded a wellness institute in New York City that is focused on helping women achieve optimal health goals through natural medicine practices, informed nutrition, lifestyle management, and personalized mind-body programs. She is the author of the Ultimate Fertility Guidebook and is a frequent speaker on the topic of women's health and wellness. She currently resides in New York City with her husband and 3 children. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. Welcome to the podcast, Christina.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. So tell us more about yourself. I'd love to hear your background and how you got into specifically fertility.
Sure. So I did Chinese medicine school, a doctorate in Chinese medicine about 20 years ago. And I had been really into martial arts and just Asian tradition, and that got me into acupuncture. I also did a degree in naturopathic so that I could learn about nutrition and Western herbs and lifestyle medicine, basically. And another reason besides, the interest in the East Asian traditions was that I had a lot of hormonal issues as a teen and young adult that weren't being addressed with Western medicine. Not that I have any problem with Western medicine. I'm so glad that we have both options. But for my particular set of issues, mood issues, energy issues, acne, that kind of thing, I just was not finding solutions in Western medicine. And I found a lot of solutions in naturopathic and Eastern medicine. So I went and lived in Asia and worked in hospitals and out in rural areas there. And then I came back to Canada, where I'm from, and had a clinic there for a while, moved to New York. And when I was moving to New York, I was hired at a fertility clinic. As an immigrant, we generally need to be hired by somebody to get a working visa. And I, lucky me, was the acupuncturist at a fertility clinic. And so there began my specialty in fertility and reproductive medicine. I had done a lot of hormonal work in fertility leading up to it, but that's when it got very specific. And then I worked there for a few years, and then I started my own practice and, been in New York doing my thing at the Naturna Institute for many years now and loving every minute of it.
Amazing. I just love the fact that you were in Asia and learned, well, just tell us about that. I would love to hear a little bit more, because it is such a different culture. And just the teachings and the wisdom that they have are just so vast and amazing.
Yeah, I loved being over there. They do volume. They see so many patients.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, so they get really good at it. And so sitting with them, they're like masters, there's just patient after patient. The entire room is full of people. And this goes on for hours. Like an herbalist, you sit with an herbalist and they're going to go through 80 to 100 prescriptions that they write per day, which is very different from what we have here. So the sheer volume of people that you see made for a quite good education. And then in the villages that I worked in, I really enjoyed being of service because I was volunteering and helping villagers. I did that in Nepal, India, and in China. And, they were game for whatever. I got to try out all sorts of different types of treatments and really grow my ability to get good results. And culturally, I mean, I loved it. I drank tea and learned about tea culture. I did martial arts and and I liked the food. So there was and really amazing historical sites. So Asia was amazing. I can't wait to go back one day, but right now I'm busy at work.
Yeah. And also India, did you get any like exposure to Ayurveda?
I did. So I worked in rural clinics with a variety of practitioners. So there was an Ayurvedic doctor, a homeopath, because homeopathy is very popular in India. It's a very inexpensive medicine to produce. And then, Western medicine doctor. But I learned a lot more about Ayurveda, Ayurvedic herbs. We had a garden in a couple of the clinics that I worked in, and they would take the herbs and they would cook from it. And I studied Ayurveda while I was there, and yoga therapy. So, I mean, the tradition of medicine in India is equally as rich as it is in China. They just don't use needles.
Right. It's really fascinating because it really is related to, and it's very based on that ancient wisdom. And what I love too about yoga is because it is such a conscious and almost like an intelligent exercise where it connects you. A lot of times with emotions in the West, we try to deal with difficult emotions through the mind. But when you get into the body, and we see that a lot of times with acupuncture as well, we're able to process that energy and really understand that it is moving energy through our bodies that makes it, and it makes it so much easier to work with.
Oh, absolutely. I remember when I was in school many years ago, I didn't feel like I had a lot of time for yoga. So there was one class at 5:30 a.m. every day that I would go to. And I made it a habit to go every single day. And my consciousness completely changed. Like
Hmm.
I was saying things all day like, I'm so grateful for this or that. And isn't everything beautiful? Like I literally was a happier, more peaceful, just generally like more well person if I did yoga regularly. So I think it's magical. And, they say in yogic tradition, it's the gateway to meditation. Like it
Hmm.
prepares you to sit in silence. So it's a spiritual form of movement, in my opinion, and good for you on so many levels.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm actually just I'm going back to reading the autobiography of a yogi and watching the Awake movie on it. It's just so fascinating, and it really is related to chi in general. Like, so they call it prana, we call it chi. There is such a relationship between ancient Vedic traditions and Indian medicine as well as Chinese medicine, and it's just fascinating. And one of the things that he formed was a school of how to live. And I thought that was so cool because, like, think about it. We are not often taught how to live. And it really brings us back to Chinese medicine and about how it's based on the Tao and it's all about understanding the basis of nature. And if we live within those laws of nature, that is when we thrive the best.
Absolutely. We have that book, the Huangdi Neijing or the Yellow Emperor's Internal Classic, where it's literally that dialogue between teacher and student about if you do this and you're in harmony with the universe, you'll be healthy. If you do this and you're not in harmony with the universe, you won't be healthy. And it's basically a book on lifestyle, an ancient book on lifestyle. And naturopathic medicine will say physician as teacher. Like, it is our role in a health profession to teach you how to live well because we can do magic things with needles and herbs and what have you, but if you're not doing basic things of nutrition and good quality sleep and breathing and movement, it's hard to get all the results that you're looking for.
Totally. Because when you are working with people, you can't just be a person that just provides acupuncture. It's not about that. It's really creating this team and a partnership because so much of what benefits our patients is really what they do off the table.
Mhm. Oh, definitely, definitely. I found that my clinical results got so much better when I started teaching people more about lifestyle and nutrition. Because like let's just say somebody has a lot of anxiety, right? And then they drink like 3 cups of coffee a day. I'm treating their anxiety. it gets a bit better, and then they go and drink their 3 cups of coffee the next morning and eat sugar, and then their anxiety's through the roof again. Like there's only so far I'm going to get with that. If
Yeah.
somebody's depressed and they're drinking alcohol all the time, that's hard to get results with, right? So if we don't make these kind of lifestyle tweaks, then the results that we get, they kind of slide backwards.
For sure. And I know that you work with herbs, and I know that it gets tricky when it comes to IVF. We can't really mix herbs with the IVF. And so we'll go to IVF as like sort of the basis. When you do work with people through IVF, what are you focused on, and what are things that they should be thinking about preparing for retrieval, preparing for transfer, and like really the difference that you get into before each?
Yeah, so I mean, there's some similarities in some of the recommendations I give, and it depends on the person and what they have going on too. Like if somebody has a diagnosis of like endometritis, when there's inflammation in the lining of their uterus due to a bacteria or something, then I might be prescribing them like an anti-yeast diet kind of thing, like a candida diet. Whereas if somebody has endometriosis, maybe I'm prescribing like a highly anti-inflammatory kind of diet. In general, I'm wanting people to, leading up to either a transfer or a retrieval cycle, I'm wanting them to have an iron rich diet, iron and B vitamins and folate. I'm wanting them to modify their exercise. So that can be a little bit different, because leading up to a retrieval, I'm kind of like, you can do exercise, don't do anything like super extreme. Like don't do like crazy boot camps. I don't want you doing like long distance running and cycling. And then leading up to a transfer, I'm not as picky, but I still say like, we're not trying to be in the fittest shape of our life when we're making a baby kind of thing. That's not the goal. And so I'm also suggesting, either for transfer or for retrieval, to get sunlight. So you in
Yep.
Florida, like I'm like, go to Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I actually, it's funny. If I do work with people from New York, I tell them get a light box, at least in the winter or something. Yeah.
It makes a difference. Like I did a couple episodes on my podcast about like vitamin D naturally, and like the seasonality of fertility, because I did some research around, it feels like there's a lot of birthdays at certain times of year, and it turns out that actually, yes, like people
Yes.
get pregnant more at some times of year, and the thinking is that it has to do with the amount of like natural vitamin D and sunlight that people are getting. So I'm like, get outside, move, like get really good quality sleep. Because these are the things that I've seen influence both, a transfer and a retrieval cycle. I often tell people, if they're like a poor responder with IVF, like, and you're not sleeping and you're just super stressed out, like you're already a poor responder. You need reserves to go back down into your ovaries, and you need your mind to be a little bit calmer. So I've noticed that people will have much more fruitful retrieval cycles, if they are more chill, and less like preoccupied and getting better rest leading into a retrieval. With a transfer, I'm extra concerned about blood sugar and insulin levels, because dysregulated blood sugar and insulin has a huge impact on, implantation, uterine receptivity, or what have you. So I'm like, eat more cinnamon, do some movement, stay away from cold foods, eat some lamb, or at least eat like cooked foods. In both cases, I like them having good quality protein. I just look at more like healthy fats and proteins leading into a retrieval, and then into a transfer. I'm more focused on healthy proteins and a low inflammatory diet.
Yeah. And you just touched on something that is so important. It really is the heart of, I mean, a lot of what we do is energy. It takes so much energy to conceive. And I can't say that enough. And when you're depleting your energy, whether it's stress or not sleeping, that energy is moving away from your future pregnancy. I always say, like, it's just so important to seal those energy leaks and then bring in more chi, vitality as much as you can. And a huge part of it is really knowing how to rest, or teaching your body to go back to that. And that's a very natural thing that we have, but I think that we ignore it for so long. our body gets off track, and then we have to almost encourage it back to a place of rest and digest.
Absolutely. I love that, like fixing the energy leaks and things like that. Like, and I also similarly teach about like the two parts of our nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And the sympathetic is go, go, go. And that's where we exist more of the time, particularly New Yorkers, where I practice, as a, ex.
Yep. I'm a recovering New Yorker.
Yeah, exactly. You're an OG. And then, our parasympathetic, which Floridians are better at, but I feel like Americans in general just aren't good at, like taking time to like rest, digest, chill. Like people in our culture don't value the balance of these two sides. We value output. We value high energy output, go, 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 do, do, do. And we're not seeing that in order to be more effective at doing, we also, which includes producing eggs and, nourishing a pregnancy, we need to rest and rejuvenate to fulfill those functions.
100%. I mean, just look at a wave. Look at a wave. The ones that go out as much as possible, like the ones with the most force, recede the most. So it's important to recede in order to provide the output, like you said. And it really comes down to understanding the yin and the yang. It's so simple, right? It's just so simple.
It's so simple, it's so elegant.
Yeah.
And it's like once you understand like the innate laws of the universe, not to get too woo-woo on everybody here, but everything becomes very simple, and you realize that you're able to accomplish so much if you find, a relative state of balance.
Yeah, no doubt. So talk to us about your book. I know that you've created a book for fertility. So talk to us about that and what is in there.
Sure. It's called the Ultimate Fertility Guidebook. And it's my 20 years of, patient care and research that I compiled to make a really stinking good argument for lifestyle, nutrition, natural medicine, for fertility, because, I'm so grateful again for Western medicine and these options I have. Like if you have blocked fallopian tubes, like IVF is your answer, right?
Yeah.
But we keep in mind also like the success rates of IVF are abysmally low. For IUI, they're extremely low also. And there's a lot that we can do by simple tweaks to our nutrition, simple tweaks to our day-to-day, and introducing natural medicine like acupuncture, herbal medicine, naturopathic. And so I've written a book that basically in the beginning teaches you about your hormones, how they work, how they influence the stages of, egg development, implantation, and what have you, moving on to the causes of infertility. And then I go into culprits, what I call culprits. So
Yeah.
inflammation, toxins, insulin imbalance, and stress hormones, and how they influence our fertility and what you can do about that. And then I have a chapter on mindfulness and the right types of exercise, on how to eat for your cycle, on all about natural medicine and how to integrate natural medicine into an IVF or IUI cycle. So what to do alongside your, Western medical treatment. Yeah. And then, alternate paths to parenthood, too. So I call it the Ultimate Fertility Guidebook because I literally tried to cover everything.
Yeah. Yep. I totally get it.
Yeah. So it's out there. It's out there, ready and waiting. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So when you do work with people, you do implement naturopathic medicine, nutrition, and Chinese medicine. So it's not just like a one type of approach.
No, I try, because my background, like my mentor, I had one, Chinese medicine mentor for a long time who was an herbal specialist, and he's excellent at acupuncture too. And then I had a naturopath I worked for years. So and I went to both schools. So I do combine it. I would say I have a really strong affinity for like teaching lifestyle and for herbal medicine. I have like an herbal medicine company, or I design herbal formulas. And I find that it's just so incredibly effective for really challenging fertility conditions. So So yeah, I do have a multidisciplinary practice, as you'll call it. I focus a lot on education, and I definitely love acupuncture so much, and traditional Eastern medicine herbs.
And for people who are in a very high demanding, like New York City, high stress environment, the environment is not something that we can always control. What are some of the things or some tips that you can provide, or how do people strategize around that?
Yeah, I mean, I tell New Yorkers that like it's kind of like a boot camp. Like you have to try extra hard to find balance here. Like you have to
Yeah.
be very deliberate about it. We're not going and like watching the ocean waves crash and having that serenity, right?
Hmm.
We have like horns beeping, ambulances, it's like high buildings, you can't barely see the sky, everybody's moving fast and like agitated. So I give advice like take white space in your day. Like don't book one thing after the other that you're rushing from one thing to the next and you're just wired all day. So like, book a little space between things so that you don't have to rush, so that you have a minute to like think or breathe. I tell people to not over caffeinate, to have as little caffeine as possible because that's, very stimulating to an already completely overstimulated society. I tell people to go to bed early,
Hmm.
because we get much better quality sleep when we go to bed earlier rather than later. You could have the
That's
exact same
true.
amount of sleep. If you go to bed later and wake up later, it's just not as restful. So that's another advice I give. I say eat healthy proteins and fats. Those are grounding. And a lot of vegetables, like not eating refined carbohydrates and sugars that kind of put you into more of that, like, sugar up, sugar down, crash, crash kind of like overstimulated, emotional roller coaster kind of state. So it's kind of the same philosophy for that too. It's like the whole lifestyle approach, like take time when you can. You just have to make it a point and, adjust what you consume to adjust your physiology and adjust your daily and nightly routine, to be able to find peace because what people are always looking for is like they read a book like it's all about the egg and they're like, oh good, I'm just going to take some supplements for my eggs. And I'm
Right.
like, you can do that, but and that might help, but it's not going to help as much as if you're taking care of the other pieces of the pie.
Oh, 100%. You could do everything by the book, but if you're really stressed out, you're not going to take it in. It'll definitely like impact everything that you're doing. We are whole people, we're not parts. So that's where all the different pieces matter. Makes a big difference.
Definitely. It's so funny because like I talk to researchers and like doctors in the field, and they're like, there's nothing to show that stress affects fertility. And I'm like, it's impossible. Like it's impossible if you think about the physiological effects and how
Just
you
think about cortisol.
and how it gets redirected and how cortisol is a precursor for reproductive hormones like progesterone, like I wrote about
Right,
in my book.
right.
Like it's like, oh, okay, like if you have deficient progesterone, are you just stressed out or are you doing too hard of workouts and that's why kind of thing? So they may not be able to find a direct link, but it is indirectly through the physiological effects and through the demands that it creates on you, it most certainly is affecting outcomes for sure. Like
Yeah.
it's like, and we can call it, I don't like the word anecdotal because it implies bias, but it's more like observational. If I have the same person do an IVF retrieval cycle while she's in New York City, and going through her regular day to day and super stressed out, she has a crappy result, gets like two eggs, they don't even fertilize, right? And then she's out on the beach for the next cycle. It's the summertime. The same medication protocol. She's just spending the time on the beach between coming back in for appointments. And then she gets like 16 eggs and like,
Hmm.
like 12 fertilized. And then she gets like six blastocysts, like such a different result. And that one thing was different.
Well, we know environment changes our physiology. So we know that, like for sure. And actually to go back to the whole thing that I thought that was interesting because I've also learned that it's around like the months of November, like fall to winter is the highest peak of pregnancies. And it's right after summer. So that's what you were saying. In the
Exactly.
summer, we're getting the vitamin D. We're also taking time off, going on vacations. And so I thought about that too. I'm like, because they know that that's a time or a peak of pregnancies, but they don't say why, or they're not certain for why. But like, logically, we
Yeah.
know what happens before winter or fall.
Well, interestingly, when I was doing the research on it, it was also like certain mating seasons. Like it was like kind of intuitive, like,
Oh,
okay,
wow.
the
That's
animals get,
interesting.
yeah, the animals get pregnant before the season to hibernate kind of thing.
Oh,
Um
wow. That's interesting.
yeah, no, it was super interesting. But whether people want to admit it or not, and I think New Yorkers are the last ones that want to admit this, we are very connected to our environment,
Mm-hmm.
and to the changes to our environment. I feel like if anything the last few years has shown us is like we are so connected.
Yeah.
And so and we can't escape the influences that our environment's going to have on us. Like we were just all stuck inside for a few days in New York because of the wildfires, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
I saw that. That's crazy.
no, that's why, like, I mean, the pandemic was like a terrible time here for families because, just being stuck in little apartments, terrible. But if we go back to, the seasonality of fertility, I only ever got pregnant in the summer and late summer and fall. And I see that with a lot of my patients too. Like, it's like when it gets sunnier, the pregnancies happen more.
So amazing. Really fascinating. Another thing that I often suggest for people in New York, especially in the winter months, but even in the summer months, is getting a grounding mat because it's important to ground and you can't always ground in New York. I mean, unless you're like but then even like then you don't want to put your bare feet. You don't know what's there. If it's like urine or who knows? I mean, you just never know.
That is so true. My kids are like, Mommy, it's so gross in New York. It's so dirty. And I'm like, yes, but we love it, kids. Don't we love it here? But the grounding mat sounds amazing. I tell everybody, I'm like, just go put your feet in the grass. Like I remember somebody telling me to go hug a tree, and at this point, sure, I'll go hug a tree. Maybe go sit at the base of it, but I'm not adverse to hugging it also.
Yeah, it does make a difference when I hug. Literally, I am a tree hugger, admittedly. It makes you feel good, though. It really does.
Oh
You
yeah,
feel the
totally.
energy. I mean, there is
Oh,
this
for
this
sure.
symbiotic effect. Like you just feel it.
Well, a lot of wisdom in those old trees, they're very like I mean, unless you're hugging a tiny little sprout, but like they're old. They've
It's true.
been there longer than us. There's like a lot of wisdom, and it's very grounding for us.
No doubt. I think nature can teach us so much, and getting that light also, that we're so receptive to light, like you were saying about getting sun. I mean, for so many reasons, also just to not confuse our own internal rhythm. This is why when we leave and we go somewhere else, like a different time zone, we feel off. And I thought it was great that you mentioned also sleeping at certain times because we have an internal clock. And actually, in Chinese medicine, every one of our organs has its own time. And that is why it's important to sleep at certain times of the evening and not like go past a certain time, go to sleep too late. Because actually, if you stay awake, you're likely to stay more awake and it's going to be harder to fall asleep. So there's like a
Oh,
window where you're able to sleep better or fall asleep better too.
oh, totally. So you have more wave analogies than me in Florida, but I use the wave analogy with sleep. I'm like, okay, you got to ride the first wave into sleep. It happens like before 10 usually. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait for the next wave because people talk about the second wind they get at night. And I'm like,
Yeah.
don't get the second wind. You don't want the second wind.
Yes,
Like,
it's true.
don't let it come. Like take that first wave when you're tired and go to sleep. Like your day tomorrow is going to be amazing if you do that, right? But yeah, I found for myself for sure, if I miss the wave, then oh God, I have to wait for the next one, and it's not as good.
No, no, no. It's not as good. The first one's always the best.
Yeah, totally.
So awesome. Well, I can keep talking to you. I love talking to fellow acupuncturists and Chinese medicine practitioners, and I love talking about nature because that's really what it's based on. It's based on these simple laws of nature. So for people who are listening and want to find out more about you, how can they find you?
Sure. So I can be found on Instagram. My handle is at Dr. Christina Burns, Dr. Doctor. My clinic is called the Naturna Institute. It's in New York. It's at Naturna_life. And then you can DM me. You can go to the website, www.naturnalife.com, or if you're ever interested in herbs and you're not already seeing Michelle, which I totally recommend you do, then you can go to junkjuicemagic.com and check out our offerings there.
Love the name.
Thank you.
Awesome.
It is magic. It's magic.
Great. I love it.
I'm like, people are like, why would I try acupuncture? I'm like, do you not want to experience the magic that is available to you in this lifetime? Because literally every day I'm like, this is magic. Like I drink the herbs and I'm like, I feel so great. Magic.
It really is magic. 100%. But that's how I felt. That's how I felt. And sometimes as a practitioner, you know it works, but sometimes it even surprises you. Even though you know it works, you're like, oh my God, like, wow, this happened that quick. Because sometimes it takes longer.
Oh no, I am every day in amazement of our field of medicine and what's possible. And I'm sure that Western medical doctors feel the same about what they do. And the ability to be in service to others and to share the benefits of this medicine is a great honor for me.
100%. Dr. Christina Burns, thank you so much for coming on. It was such a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.